5, 4, 3, 2. Hello and welcome to Communicate with Power. I'm Barry McLaughlin, and as always, I'm here with my partner, Laura Peck. Hey, Laura, how are
Hello.
you? Good to see you on a beautiful day. It's, well, in Ottawa terms, it's a very cold day, and Winterlude is underway, which is highlighted by the longest skating canal in the world. And we have all kinds of things going on down there. We hope to visit that. So today we're going to be talking about the touch on what's happening or what has happened, sad news in the world of show business, as well as we're going to talk about good news for the Conservatives, the successful convention that they're having out in Calgary, leadership review, they call it. And we'll talk about the results of that for leader Pierre Poilievre. So, Laura, let's start off with the sad news of the passing of Catherine O'Hara, famous for everything from SCTV to Home Alone, the series of those, to Schitt's Creek, and to all those great Waiting for Guffman and the other mockumentaries that they made so famous. And she's of course Canadian, born in Toronto, and Canadians have always she's always been very outspoken and so positive about her growing up. She is Canadian, even though she lived for, of course, many years in Brentwood in Los Angeles, and she is a world class figure. Just a wonderful. She was just a wonderful performer in every way. My exposure to her was I was second vice president of ACTRA, which is the Alliance of Canadian Cinema, Television, and Radio Artists. And every year we'd hold the annual National Actor Awards, as well as locally here in Ottawa, but the National Awards, and I was invited to that. I was part of, I guess, the organizing group of it. And we had a hospitality suite for the nominees, and I was invited to that. So in there came the cast of SCTV, and they were nominated for best, a comedy show at the awards, and they were up against the Royal Canadian Air Force, which I had performed in several years prior to that, and so I guess they were raising some concerns about was the fix in? They were going to lose again because they had lost the previous year to the Royal Canadian Air Force. So one of the organizers said, "Well, why don't you speak to Barry McLaughlin?" So they asked me if I would, speak to them, which is what I did. In there was John Candy, Joe Flaherty, Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short, and Dave Thomas. It could have been a couple more. I mean, just a stellar cast, amazing people. I was a huge fan of theirs. I never missed an episode of that. And Catherine Harris. So they raised with me. They said, is the fix in? Is the CBC going to win again with the Royal Canadian Air Force? And I said, well, I could tell you I wasn't a formal member of them, but I performed 32 shows with them at the National Arts Center in Ottawa, and I do know them, of course, and I know the way that the independent panels vote on all the categories. And I can assure you, it's independently done. There's nobody that has any kind of a bias or a fix-in to vote for the Royal Canadian Air Force. So I said, I just want to reassure you of that. And they were very pleased that I took the time, or they verbalized that, to reassure them of that. And I only remember from Catherine, first of all, she was a startlingly attractive woman who had an amazing personality, very warm and engaging, as really they all did. They were just so positive people, and they couldn't have been nicer about it. They weren't really whining and complaining, but they just wanted some kind of, reassurance, let's put it that way. So I was pleased to do that. And I bumped into her one other time in Toronto. So I did, I can't say I knew her, but I certainly remember a number of times meeting her, crossing paths with her, and of course, just being a great talent. Now, Laura, we both ended up knowing her brother, Tom O'Hara. Why don't you tell us about your experience with Tom?
I had a client who had a big barrier, and I was able to identify this. And Tom was a sports psychologist. So I made the appointment, we go in, and it was very informative in that he had a triangular way of doing his therapy. And what it was is that he being, as he identified, Irish Catholic, And
Yeah, I
he
wonder how
sort
I
of
guessed
gave
that
me
one.
the same story as you gave, that he learned everything with his sister Catherine, the six kids at the table, and
Yeah,
you had to
same with me.
speak
Yeah,
quickly to get your words in quickly. But anyway, he said that he had learned this as well as he had done the degrees and things like that. But more importantly, it's what he learned from his family growing up.
yeah.
And of course, this week I saw a film at the Irish Embassy called This Small Island. And the Irish had such a long history of being really oppressed. Anyway, all this to say, with a full
That's how we
billing.
that's how we end up with a sense of humor. You got to laugh about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how they ended up being so funny. Anyway, the therapy was this, and anybody can use this. So the therapist will start off telling us something about him, which I just told you. And then I had to say something that was in my heart that was a barrier for me. And then the person that I had brought in, that person had to reveal also. And for that person, it was very, very difficult. However, during that therapy session, we had a lot of success because every single time that I ran into this person later on, she would recall about how
Wow.
much that therapy had
Yeah.
helped her. And then, of course, we became friends with Tom.
Yeah.
The
And
other
his wife
interesting
Jocelyn.
thing
Yeah.
is that even after he moved to Toronto, we kept in touch.
Yeah.
So his wife's name was Jocelyn. And if you'll notice, Catherine O'Hara in Schitt's Creek, there's always a character, or almost, with the name Jocelyn, because
Yeah.
she just loved saying that
Yeah.
name,
Yeah.
and she was
I
a
noticed that.
tremendous, tremendous talent.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that Barry, you and I shared was Dr. Christy or Kirsty Duncan. And so she
Yeah.
came into us for training, and we really, really liked her. We admired her scientific mind.
Now, when you say doctor, I guess we've got to say that she was appointed cabinet minister,
Yes,
and I guess it was a fitness and amateur sport and science. I think she had the two portfolios, as I recall, and we were doing the media training for her, and about 3 or 4 times, as I recall. And boy, what a nice person, a very kind, genuine person, and very committed to science, STEM studies for young girls. She was really big on that. Girls in school and then later women were often, underrepresented in all the maths and sciences. And so she was really tackling that as a priority that really meant a lot to her, and so many other accomplishments. So just a wonderful person who sadly passed away also, in her case with cancer. So we of course wanted to wish her family our deepest condolences and to her many friends. So it was quite, I hate to start our podcast with sadness, but I think that's part of the world that we're in. And I think it's really nice to pay tribute to people that have crossed our paths, or even if they haven't, they've crossed the world's path. And so we are really appreciative of them. So let's turn to speaking of appreciation. Does the Conservative Party still appreciate their leader, Pierre Poilievre? And they had, of course, the mandatory leadership review that took place in Calgary. I think I'm not sure if it's all wrapped up yet, but I think it's still underway in some way. So he gave a big speech last night. Let's start with that, Laura. What did you think of Pierre Poilievre's speech?
well, personally, I liked it. He goes back to his origin story, telling stories about he was an adopted child and very much wanted, and talked about his father getting him up at very early in the morning to go out to deliver newspapers, and how much his mother had done for him over the years. So you have to go back to that origin story and
Yeah.
say this is a guy who has done quite well. And of course we all know that his adult life, he's been a politician the whole time,
Yeah.
but he did have a lot of life experience growing up. And then also it was very memorable when he talked about how his young daughter, who is on the autism range, apparently she has spoken her first words.
Yeah.
So that was something that any parent would feel very happy for them.
Yes, it really resonated emotionally. He showed emotion, as his wife Anna did in the audience. Yeah, I think that really struck a chord. He did it in his own way, in his own words, and it really was touching. I have said for years one of the problems for Pierre Poilievre, he never shows this side of him. We knew him well enough in the neighborhood as well as as a client at one point many years ago when he was in cabinet and government. And we got to know Pierre. And I've said to people, I wish Pierre would show more of the three-dimensional Pierre Poilievre that we knew. You only see this one-dimensional attack machine in the House of Commons. And I would say when I bump into various people around him, I'd say, he's got to show more of a human being that people can relate to. The old bit that's always been the test ultimately of a politician is that the politician you want to sit down and have a beer with, and Pierre wasn't qualifying for that. Yet I have seen him in action. Like he gives great speeches. He'll have a crowd of 2,000 people that is barely covered on television, but a huge audience that love him. So he has great communication skills. Nobody is a greater attack machine in the House of Commons. Poor Justin Trudeau still has the scars to bear for it of the attacks of Pierre Poilievre on him. I just wish it wasn't so personal. I personally, if I were his advisor, I'd say, okay, you don't have to attack the person. You can attack the issues, of course. You're the leader of His Majesty, excuse me, years of that phrase, His Majesty's loyal opposition, and that is exactly what his role is. He also has to demonstrate that he has a grasp of the issues, and he does. He seems to have a great grasp of the issues, and he's been really beating the drum on affordability, the thematic of that, affordability. He owned that to the point where I think Mark Carney and his team began to, borrow some of his policy initiatives. So,
That would be my question. What
yeah,
did you think of? We saw a different funny side of
yeah.
Mark Carney this week.
Oh, Mark Carney, yeah. Well, I mean, really, I agree with you. It was a side that we don't normally see of Mark Carney. You don't think of him as having a sense of humor, but you and I saw him, oh, I guess it was about a year before he was elected. He came to the local community center and he was very funny. It was all self-deprecatory humor, which is the right kind of humor. Don't laugh, at the expense of others. He knew not to do that, and he was very funny. And he packed the place, and I was really quite impressed with his sense of humor, and he showed it um, when the movie business came to town, and he did the star of what's called Heated Rivalry. What's the name of
Yeah,
it?
the
Anyway,
hockey players.
yeah, like I was saying, the Crave production and the star of that, he was very funny with that, and I think he needs to show more of that. He can be too much the button down banker. So I think each of them have some growth. I was coming back to Polyev for a moment. I felt we could have. I think the only part missing in the whole thing was we need to know what's he going to do about a Donald Trump. If he got into power, what would he do about Donald Trump, the tariffs, how his treatment of Canada? What's he going to do about that? Is it going to be the same old, same old? If he's going to do anything new, I think Canadians have a right to know what is it. And it is a vulnerability for him because he has only really, I don't think he's ever criticized Donald Trump directly. And that obviously has to be, I can't imagine he's agreeing with everything Donald Trump does. It must be part of, a deliberate strategy not to criticize, not to awaken the bear, I guess. But I don't think Canadians would be very satisfied with that. So I think he has to, apparently they're going to find ways for him to bring up those issues. I just felt it was worth a couple of lines in that speech last night.
So I wanted to ask you if you were the marketing person for the Melania movie. As we know, they spent $75 million
Yeah,
on doing this movie. 35 of it just went to marketing.
yeah.
She got 28, and the rest of it
Uh-huh.
was for the actual production. So now we know that in some theaters it was empty.
Yeah.
Even when the president himself showed it, there were empty seats. So what do you do when you only have 13% filled theaters across the United
Well,
States?
I think maybe
How would
we're
you
missing.
market that? What's
Well, I think we're all
that's a
missing.
challenge.
I think we're all missing the story. I think the real story is remember the producers. Let's make this play. You can make more money with a Broadway flop than a success. So they set out to make a disastrous movie. Springtime for Hitler was the chorus and everything. So it was one of the funniest movies and Broadway plays themselves. It turned out to be, wouldn't you know it, darn it, a huge success. Now, in this case, if they set out to have a disaster, they've certainly accomplished their goal. I mean, there's nobody in the theaters. First of all, it should never have been a theatrical release. This was an Amazon paid. Jeff Bezos probably personally cut the check that she's pocketing $28 million for. So, which is an outrageous indirect way of grifting. So to me, it's like, what she could have done. It was a golden opportunity to take her $28 million and give it to, poor kids, give it to people that are suffering in America. There's a lot of them. It'd be very, very kind of her to do that. And I think even if it was a stinko of a movie, at least people would say, I respect the fact that, yes, she got a huge amount of money, but she gave it to those in need. What a golden gift that she has ignored. So I don't, like I say, I don't know if it was a deliberate disaster, but has become one. And this could be a punchline for years to come. So I do think that it's salvageable still, actually, even though late in the game, to give out this money to those that need it. It would be great for her to do that.
Yeah, it's a good strategy. I don't think she is going to be listening to
No,
us.
no,
Nevertheless, it is a good
yeah,
strategy, and I'm
yeah,
sure that by later on today, you'll have even more suggestions as to
yeah.
how to sell that movie. But you make a good point because even movies like It's a Wonderful Life, and there's many, many movies that did not, or TV shows, Friends did not do well at first. It
Sure,
was years later, and as we know,
yeah,
I mean, you can still turn TV on. So
sure.
it could be one of those hate watch movies.
Well, hate watch, yeah, I suppose. But that's why they have Amazon Channel, Prime, I should say, in that case. They could easily probably get big audience in Prime out of curiosity alone. Just a theatrical release, there are very few documentaries that do exceptionally well. Michael Moore made his mark when he began to release them theatrically at the beginning of his career. Roger and Me, and there was a few other of those that did surprisingly well. But that's not every movie. People going out, cold in the dark and, freezing temperatures to go to a documentary on Melania. Give me a break. There was nothing about it that you'd anyway say, yeah, is that ever worth it? So I think again, if they paid 35 million for marketing, oh, I think somebody should get their money back on that one. And I'll do it for $1.50. Give her that advice, and I'll even go with her to hand out the money to those in need. It would have enormously salvaged her reputation, which of course has taken a
She's an
batter.
immigrant, maybe an immigrant family, or
Yeah.
several,
Well,
or women.
Laura. Now that would be an incredible contradiction in terms in
Yeah.
the Trump household, given how he's treating the
How about
reputation.
those people who have died? How
Yeah.
about donating to their
Yeah.
families?
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. But again, I don't believe that's going to happen. I could be wrong. So that's, those stories. And I think that maybe, is there anything looking forward you say, well, what are we all waiting for? Well, certainly Canadians are being threatened constantly with more tariffs. You had the the airlines, you're already getting threats of Trump that if you don't certify these Gulfstream jets, then we're going to slap a 50% tariff on your planes or something. Just constant threats. And Canadians are so fed up with that. And I'm sure every country in the world is. There's always this ongoing argument. Oh, you know, there's sort of backlash against Mark Carney's Davos speech because he didn't use Trump's name, but it was clear who he was talking about in his criticisms. And there were people saying, well, he's kind of, he's waking the bear. He's saying things about him. He could get them all mad again. But once you're bullied and bullied and bullied, no matter how much you roll over and play dead, they're going to find something else they're going to humiliate you. And Donald always wants to not only bully you, but he wants to, when you're finally down and out, he's going to find another way to humiliate you, Rudy Giuliani. So I think that this is the reality of this man, and I think it does take courage to say, well, guess what? We're going to call, we're going to call it the way we see it, and this is outrageous, and we're not putting up with that. Canada has its own mechanisms here, and if you want to pretend that we don't exist and you don't need us, I wouldn't push that too far if I were you. And we have the resources that he needs, whether it's the heavy oil from Alberta, uh, whether it's our lumber, whether it's our hydroelectric power, whether it's our clean water. I could go on and on, but we basically, I think what Mark Carney has done, you're kind of seeing this now with the Davos speech. He's drawn a line in the sand, and he won't overtly threaten Trump. He won't say the things I said, but it's there. And Canadians really only take a certain amount of this. We're all doing it silently. Nobody's going to the States pretty well. I feel actually badly for those small, business owners and hospitality, sector that are just not getting their Canadians to come to their inns or to their restaurants or anything. And it's sad, really, at that level. But they need to turn around and say to their elected representatives, we've had enough. This has to stop. And you are seeing that now in America with regard to the protests against what's taken place in Minneapolis and elsewhere. Americans are furious. And it happens so quickly, really, that even he had to kick out, Kristi Noem, who was a disaster from the get-go. And he's put in, uh, the all thick-necked, what's his name, Thurman, whatever his name is, in charge of it all. He's not much better, I don't think, but he had to make a change. And so I'm just saying that this is really, even Trump is realizing, boy, this whole immigration thing is becoming a disaster. He has to defend it. They'll never apologize for murdering, the nurse, in that
Alex Preddy.
situation. Yeah, and these are innocent people that really should not have been killed by any stretch of the imagination, should not have been attacked by the ICE agents, and they're getting away with things that Americans, they're interesting. It might take them a while to get riled up, but once they do, look out. And I think we're reaching that lookout line with the American public. So we'll see if that changes anything of substance.
So
Okay,
until next time,
yeah, we're gonna say goodbye. By the way, we will keep you posted, and I hope you'll see at the bottom of this that we are launching our Communicate with Power series of virtual seminars. They're half-day seminars that we'd love you to participate in. You can either do that, enroll individually, or you can enroll, get some friends together, get some group together from work, and have it as a group. So we'd very much like you to look at that, communicatewithpower.store. You'll see the information at the bottom of this podcast episode. So once again, thanks everybody, and have a great weekend and
thanks
a
for
great week.
watching.
Okay, bye-bye.